What's up, Roadrunners? My name is Enrique Medina, and we welcome you guys back to this week's episode of The Sportsrunner. In this week's episode, we give you the latest on the most recent NBA milestone and breaking news from this week in basketball. We also give you more on the European Super League, which could have a very drastic effect on the game of soccer both in Europe and worldwide. We also give you the most recent news from a very action-packed week in Major League Baseball. We also give you the latest on NFL signings and a very surprising retirement we saw this week in football. We also come back with you guys with another segment of the Sportsrunner Digest, and we also talk with another athlete this week with the Sportsrunner Spotlight. We have this and more in this week's episode of The Sportsrunner. With that said, we begin our show with our weekly recaps with Sportsrunner Weekly. Justin, out to you with the latest on NBA news.
My name is Justin Gomez, and this is your weekly NBA recap. First up, we have LaMarcus Aldridge announcing his retirement after playing with an irregular heartbeat last week. This comes as a real shock to people, because he had just signed with the Brooklyn Nets and looked like he had a real shot of winning a ring this year. Next up, we have Dallas Mavericks superstar Luka Doncic hitting a ridiculous game-winning floating three against the Memphis Grizzlies. This game winner still blows many people's mind, as Luka Doncic was off balance and just threw the ball up, but somehow still got it to go. Next up, we have Chris Paul from the Phoenix Suns passing Scottie Pippen and Maurice Cheeks for all-time steals and moves up to 5th on the list. This is a great accomplishment for Chris Paul, as Scottie Pippen was known as one of the best defenders. With passing Scottie Pippen in steals, I believe that this makes Chris Paul an elite defender in this league. People should put more respect on his defensive game. Next up, we have Miles Bridges of the Charlotte Hornets in a crazy dunk over Clint Capella. It still amazes me that this guy is still able to do these crazy dunks over these elite defenders. Next up is some devastating news, as Jamal Murray suffers a torn ACL in his left knee, putting him out for the rest of the season. Without Jamal Murray, I believe this hurts whatever little chance the Denver Nuggets had at winning a title this year, as they'll have to continue without their star point guard. Lastly, we have the Golden State Warriors superstar Stephen Curry dropping 53 points against the Denver Nuggets and passing Wilt Chamberlain for most points in Warriors history. It is crazy that Stephen Curry is able to pass Wilt Chamberlain for most points in Warriors history, but still not looking like he's planning on slowing down anytime soon.
Thank you, Justin, for the latest on NBA news. We now take things to you, Fernando, with the latest on soccer and the European Super League. Fernando, out to you.
Hello, sports runners. My name is Fernando Ramos, and this week's episode we will be covering the European Super League. It's been a shock to all of us to hear that this evening, 12 Europeans' top biggest clubs, that includes the top 6 from the Premier League, top 3 from La Liga, and the top 3 from the Serie A, have just announced that they will break away from their own domestic leagues to form a European Super League. This is a direct statement from the European Super League leaders. This is the way how the league will be formatted. It states 20 participating clubs will be with 15 founding clubs and a qualifying mechanism for a further 5 teams to qualify annually based on the achievements of prior seasons. It will be midweek fixtures with all participating clubs continuing to compete in their respective national leagues, preserving the tradition, domestic match calendars which remains at the heart of a club's game. Although I've just stated that the UEFA Super League intends for their clubs participating in their own league to continue in their own domestic leagues, however, the Barclays Premier League have now just released a statement saying that any team who participates in the UEFA Super League will result in deduction of points, fines, and even loss of trophies. There will be no relegation and promotion system in this new European Super League. This takes away the excitement of the sport we love. UEFA have came out and said that any team who participates in this European Super League will be banned from European competitions. This includes the Champions League and the Europa League. FIFA has also come out and stated that all the players who participate in this European Super League can possibly be banned from the 2022 World Cup. This is still a breaking topic. There's still lots of more information and news to come. I'll be sure to inform you guys through El Paisano newspaper, as well as I'll make sure to inform you guys on next week's episode on anything that I missed. With that being said, this concludes this week's episode of Sportsrunner. Now on to the next sport.
Thank you, Fernando, for the latest on soccer news and, some pretty tough news at that with the European Super League for many, many soccer fans around the globe. But with that said, we now switch on to baseball and the MLB, and we have plenty to talk about, from game action recaps and just so much more from this week in Major League Baseball with you guys. Before we actually head into game action, we had very surprising news from the New York Yankees camp. Yankees first baseman and 14-year veteran Jay Bruce announced his retirement Sunday morning. Bruce, now 34 years of age, announced that he would immediately be retiring after Sunday afternoon's game against the Tampa Bay Rays. Bruce, who had originally been brought to replace the currently injured Luke Voit for the Yankees, announced his retirement at a pretty unusual time. The longtime Cincinnati Red, Jay Bruce, retires with 319 career home runs. Definitely some very defining career moments, winning the NL Central back in 2010 for the Reds, some big postseason home runs in 2017 with the Indians. Definitely a great career to be proud of. Moving on to game action, we begin with two very awesome pitching accomplishments that we saw this week from two of the best pitchers in the game. This week we saw the Cleveland Indians' Shane Bieber strike out 13 Cincinnati Reds hitters on Sunday afternoon, and he accomplished something that had never been done before in Major League Baseball's history. With Sunday afternoon's performance, Bieber becomes the first ever pitcher in Major League Baseball history to start his season in 4 consecutive starts with 10-plus strikeouts. Bieber will look to keep that streak going this weekend when he faces off against the New York Yankees. As for the other pitching feat that we saw this week, we saw the New York Mets' Jacob deGrom strike out 9 straight Colorado Rockies during his Saturday afternoon start at Coors Field. deGrom was actually 1 strikeout away from reaching the Major League record for most consecutive strikeouts, which is actually held by another New York Met legend, Tom Seaver. deGrom would end the day with 14 strikeouts and ultimately getting the victory in a come-from-behind win from the Mets on Saturday afternoon. Moving away from those two though, I bring to you what was undoubtedly the best pitching performance from last week. The Chicago White Sox, Carlos Rodon, pitched his first no-hitter of his career Wednesday night against the Cleveland Indians, striking out 7 Indians hitters on the night, and actually being 2 outs away from actually getting the first perfect game in Major League Baseball since all the way back in 2012. It's already almost been a decade since the last time we've seen a no-hitter. Can you believe that? The perfect game bid for Carlos Rodon ended definitely on a very controversial manner when he controversially hit the Cleveland Indians catcher Roberto Perez with 1 out in the 9th inning. Good thing for Rodon, he proceeded to strike out Yu Chang for the 2nd out of the 9th inning and got a ground out from Jordan Luplow to finish off the no-hitter. An even greater accomplishment than Shane Bieber and Jacob deGrom, if you ask me. Away from that, we had arguably the most anticipated matchup right now of the young season so far, between the San Diego Padres and the reigning World Series champions, Los Angeles Dodgers. If you do recall from last season, the Dodgers and the Padres squared off in the postseason in the NLDS and had many intense games throughout the regular season. The two teams played a 3-game series this weekend from San Diego's Petco Park, and let me just tell you, this series lived up to the hype and then some. In Game 1 of the series, we saw a regular season classic. We got to see Walker Buehler for the Los Angeles Dodgers pitch 6 frames of 2-run ball, one of those runs actually being a home run off of stud shortstop for the San Diego Padres, Fernando Tatis Jr., who actually came back from his injury that we talked about last week. In the game, we also saw Dodgers rookie Luke Raley hit his first big league home run, but it was definitely without a doubt the late innings that stole the show. The team traded runs in the 8th and 9th inning respectively, and ultimately went to extras to decide it. We saw things get really choppy in the 10th inning as the benches cleared after a hit by pitch by the Dodgers pitcher Dennis Santana. But ultimately, it was the Los Angeles Dodgers, the reigning World Series champions, who got the last laugh, scoring 5 in the 12th inning and ultimately winning by a score of 11-6. But let me just tell you, that was just Game 1 of the 3-game series. Game 2 saw an epic pitchers duel between the Padres' Yu Darvish and the Dodgers' Clayton Kershaw. But it was the Dodgers again who prevailed. The Dodgers would only muster 1 run off of Yu Darvish on a bases-loaded walk, crazily enough, to, out of all people, Clayton Kershaw, the pitcher. And Kershaw would later receive an insurance run in the 9th inning from a Justin Turner home run. But without a doubt, the game's defining moment came in the bottom of the 9th as Dodgers outfielder Mookie Betts made a game-ending, game-saving diving catch to secure a 2-0 win for the boys in blue. As for Game 3 of the series, we saw Blake Snell rematch against the Dodgers, who, if you remember, got controversially taken out from last year's World Series Game 6 back when he was a Tampa Bay Ray. And if you do remember, it ultimately led to the Dodgers winning Game 6, coming from behind and winning their first championship in 32 years. Similar to Game 2 between Yu Darvish and Clayton Kershaw, we saw pretty similar things with Blake Snell scoring off against the Dodgers' Trevor Bauer. We saw definitely, without a doubt, another pitcher's duel between Bauer and Blake Snell. But it was the Padres who this time avoided the sweep, scoring 3 runs in the 7th and 8th inning combined, winning in a come-from-behind victory. As far as our MLB standings are concerned at the very moment, we see the Boston Red Sox in first place in the American League East, and, more surprisingly than that, we actually see the New York Yankees, of all people, surprisingly well behind in the American League East at this moment, after losing a weekend series, getting swept by the Tampa Bay Rays this weekend. In the AL Central, we see the Kansas City Royals have a slim lead over the Cleveland Indians, and we actually have the Seattle Mariners, and yes, the Seattle Mariners up in the division in the AL West, holding a slim lead as of now over the Los Angeles Angels. In the National League, we currently have the New York Mets leading the NL East. We have the Cincinnati Reds maintaining their division lead from last week in the NL Central, and we have the Los Angeles Dodgers still maintaining Major League Baseball's best record, and of course the best record in the NL West, with the Giants and Padres both 3.5 games behind in second place in the NL West standings. But with that said, Roadrunners, that will officially conclude this week's baseball segment of Sportsrunner Weekly. I'm Enrique Medina. Now we move things out to you, Luke, with the latest on football.
What's up, Roadrunners? It's Luke, and here is another NFL recap. Today we're going to start off with Julian Edelman's retirement. This guy just has an amazing story. He started off in high school with no scholarships. Then at college, he only played quarterback and only had 1 career reception. Then he became a 7th-round draft pick, and then he became one of Tom Brady's most reliable weapons ever. Then he became a 3-time Super Bowl champ. This guy just has an amazing story, just an underdog story. He wasn't supposed to be there, but he made it anyways. Became very consistent, respect the veteran. And then his playoff stats are pretty remarkable too. He had 15 starts, 118 catches, 1,442 yards, and 7 total touchdowns. This dude has had a crazy career, and you gotta respect him for all that hard work he's been through and all the challenges he's overcome. But now the question is whether or not he's a Hall of Famer. Some are saying that even though he has pretty good postseason stats, that he doesn't have the regular season stats to back up a Hall of Fame resume. Regardless or not, if you believe he's a Hall of Famer, you can't deny the great story that he's had and just how good he's been in the league. So gotta give credit where credit's due, and just great career to Julian Edelman. Next, we have the second pro days. So during the second pro days, NFL teams are able to go visit the soon-to-be rookies. They could ask them to do more specific things than what they saw during the first pro days. And right now, Justin Fields, quarterback for Ohio State University, is just still in the spotlight. The Jets, 49ers, Falcons, Panthers, and the Broncos all came out to see him. These are all teams that are in desperate need of a quarterback. And, even though Trevor Lawrence is looking to be the first-round pick, Justin Fields is taking a lot of fire right now, showing off his arm, saying he's the best quarterback in the league, doing the same game-like throws that he did in his first pro day. The hype is starting to become really real for him. He may even take the first overall pick spot, but we have yet to see. And a very big move by the Browns. The Browns just secured Jadeveon Clowney from the Tennessee Titans. Cleveland really surprised everyone last year, had a winning record, offense was rolling, and their defense really became almost pretty elite. Adding Jadeveon Clowney is going to help them greatly. We're going to see if they can push them further into the playoffs, and maybe they might be Super Bowl contenders. They're still waiting and see if they might secure Odell Beckham Jr., and they still have enough capital to bring another big name free agents that are out there. So we're just going to have to wait and see if the Cleveland Browns are going to be for real next season. But thank you again for tuning in to Sportsrunner, and we'll see you next time.
A lot of great news from this week's weekly recaps, but let's get to hear a little bit more about what we heard in Sportsrunner Weekly this week with the Sportsrunner Digest. Hello, Roadrunners. My name is Enrique Medina, joined by Fernando Ramos, Justin Gomez, and Luke Perez for the Sportsrunner Digest, where we digest some of that information you guys just heard in our weekly recaps in Sportsrunner Weekly in more depth and in more detail. So with that being said, Justin, go ahead and start us off with the NBA. What you got?
All right, so this week, Golden State Warriors superstar Stephen Curry actually dropped 53 points against the Denver Nuggets and actually passed Wilt Chamberlain for most points in Warriors history. From my standpoint, it was just only a matter of time for him. We all know how great Steph Curry is. He changed the game, just changed the way it's played. But unfortunately, in that same game, Jamal Murray for the Denver Nuggets actually went down with a torn ACL injury. He'll be off the rest of the season, and in my opinion, kind of defeats whatever chance the Denver Nuggets had at a title this year. So I just want to know what do you guys think about how the Denver Nuggets will be able to continue?
Yeah, honestly, it's tough news. Jokic is still there, but Jamal Murray's kind of that guy who could get a bucket whenever you need to. Jokic is more of the playmaker. He could get a basket inside. But Jamal Murray's kind of that shot creator that every playoff team needs for a deep playoff run. And we saw that last year with their run against, the comeback against the Clippers and things of that nature. His presence and his leadership too on the Denver Nuggets is going to be missed a lot. And honestly, I agree with you, Justin. It pretty much, I think in my mind, defeats their chances of any sort of deep playoff run at this point. Maybe a second round appearance, but I think at this point, yeah, their chances are pretty much gone and over with for me.
Yeah, they always say in basketball, you need at least two superstars, and no slight against Joker, but he can't get it done all by himself, despite putting up MVP numbers this season. They're still a well-coached team. They have good depth. Michael Porter Jr. is growing into his own and is becoming his own standout on that team. But Michael Porter Jr. and Joker, they're not going to just get it done together. They do need Jamal. We've seen playoff Jamal Murray, in the bubble, what he could bring to the table and his intensity and just leadership overall, like you said, Enrique. They're definitely going to miss it. I could probably see them dropping down a few seeds as well. They probably get through the first round, but as far as second round, it's going to be definitely tough. When it comes to Curry, I think he's become Mr. Warrior now. I think he's the all-time great Golden State Warrior now. No disrespect to Wilt Chamberlain, but I think he also said Steph Curry, changed the game, made everyone want to take shots now. He's just an exciting player, putting up monster stats, breaking records. Yeah, Steph Curry is the ultimate Golden State Warrior now too.
And then, you never want to see a player basketball player get his ACL turn. I think the main thing for the Nuggets right now is to get Glenn Murray back to 100%, as fast as he can. Or when Glenn Murray feels that he can get back to his top level. And for Glenn Murray, I think for him, he just needs to focus because even when someone turns the ACL, it's kind of hard for them to get back. That's kind of how do I say, nervousness, or they don't feel the same, after an injury like that.
Yeah, and to go on with that, we have seen two sides of the stories before. We've seen a guy like D Rose who just truly hasn't been the same after all the injuries he kind of went through. But he had more of an injury history. We've seen guys like Paul George who had a very for many people that would be a career ender, but he just came back and it almost seems like he's even better since the injury he had, I think back in 2014, 2015 around there. But we've seen instances where players have come back even better. I'm curious to see if that'll be the case with Jamal. But I'd say again, yeah, I'd say as far as their chances for this year, they're pretty much out and over with. And also with Curry, totally agree with you, Luke. Mr. Warrior, change the game. All these 3-point shots that he's accumulated. It's just going to be about time that he passes Ray Allen also for that in regards to the all-time 3-point marksman. So, I mean, it's been like a blessing, you could say, just seeing him play and change the game as an NBA fan. And it's awesome to watch for sure. Oh, you guys have anything else to add before we move into our next topic?
No.
All right, for sure. So in that case, Fernando, give us more news on soccer and the UEFA Super League.
So this week we just heard news from UEFA and from different leagues that the big six from the Premier League and the top three from Spain, the top three from Italy, are about to break out and form their own European Super League. Personally, I hate this idea. I think it's just the top people running to get money. There's not going to be any excitement. They're taking away all the foundations of what soccer, football is was built off. They have no consideration of the club's history, of the league's history. They have no consideration over any of the teams that are in the Premier League or in the Liga or the Serie A. They just leaving them in the dust. I just want to see what you guys think about that.
Yeah, definitely for me. Yeah, I have the same stance. I don't like this idea at all. I know you had mentioned before the meeting started that if this does happen, for pretty much all the teams, their history of what they did in their league will be washed away. So everything, Manchester City, Manchester United, Real Madrid, Barcelona, Juventus, all these historic teams that what they've accomplished in their specific league, it's going to be wiped out. And it's like they're starting from scratch with this Super League. And I mean, it's an interesting idea seeing all like the best teams together in one league, but I honestly agree that it just seems like a money grabber. I know you mentioned that they won't be able to participate in other tournaments and things like this. They'll just be in this Super League playing each other every week or whenever they play each other. It also takes away from players playing internationally during international breaks and things of that sort, things of that such. And I just think it's a terrible idea altogether.
And then for the Premier League, for the English team, they're taking away the top six, which in the original top six is Manchester United, Manchester City, Chelsea, Liverpool, and Arsenal. But if you look at the table right now, Manchester United, Arsenal, and Tottenham are not a big six. You have teams like Everton, like Leicester City, like Southampton, who over the last 10 years have become better than the original top six, but they're not getting even involved into this European Super League, which it just doesn't make sense. It's not even the top six anymore. It's just whoever has the most money is going to go into this league to make even more money.
You also have to think, like, what does this do for the other leagues? What does it do for the Premier League? How will that affect the Premier League financially? How will that affect La Liga financially? Will those leagues be able to keep up and things of that source? It's not just the football, but also other things that are really put at risk with the idea of the UEFA Super League. And I just think it's too risky and just not a fun idea at all to actually put in place.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I have just now they've been statements from the what's it called, the Barclays Premier League, the La Liga, and UEFA, saying that if these teams do sign to join this Super League, that the Premier League will deduct points, will fine them, take away all their trophies. Same goes for La Liga. And for UEFA, for the Champions League, they say that that if these teams do sign this Super League to enter, they'll be eliminated from all UEFA tournaments. So that includes the Champions League and the UEFA's Europa League next season.
Yeah. Justin, what are your thoughts on it? I mean, I just think it's a bad idea altogether. I'm curious to see what you think about it.
I don't really know much about soccer. I don't really watch it, but like from what it sounds like, like to an average person, you would think like it sounds like a cool idea, like, oh, Super League, like best teams playing each other, like why not? But it seems like they're just sacrificing like way too much for it to happen. You're just talking about how like they'll lose all like their past. It takes a long time for like teams to build up their history and just like storyline throughout the league. So just to throw that all away just for a league just doesn't seem right for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It seems like a money grabber. Like it seems too obvious that it's a money grabber type of thing. Yeah.
And in the worst timing too. Sorry to interrupt. But in the worst timing, we're in the middle of a pandemic. People are struggling to get struggling to keep their jobs, and they expect their fans to go travel to different countries to go see their team play every week. It doesn't make any sense.
Great point. It takes almost everything away from the fans, like literally everything. It
Right.
does. I mean, except for those teams that are in it. Even then, like what you mentioned, it takes away so much too. Being able to travel to other countries and things of that sort. But I mean, other than that, it's gonna be interesting to see what happens moving forward with the UEFA Super League. Let's hope it doesn't come into fruition as far as like football and soccer fans as a whole, but we'll have to wait and see. With that said, we move on into our next topic. We move on to Major League Baseball and the MLB, of course. This weekend, we have a super big rivalry series between the Los Angeles Dodgers and the San Diego Padres. So just to give you guys a little bit of context, really the Padres within the last 10 or 15 years have not been a good team at all. They've been one of the worst teams in the past 10 to 15 years. But just recently, in the past 2 to 3 seasons, and probably more so the last two, they've really built themselves as a contender. And now they're legitimate World Series contenders, a World Series favorite, one of the top 5 probably. And obviously last year we saw the Dodgers and the Padres face off against each other in the first round of the playoffs in the divisional series of the National League. And I mean, just even last year in general, we saw a lot of fireworks between the two teams, a lot of intensity of what a rivalry is supposed to be. And that even like heightened even more during the playoffs last year. And I'm curious to see from you guys, do you guys think this is how should I word this? Like a legitimate rivalry? Do you guys think this rivalry, like this matchup is like the new biggest rivalry in baseball, or do you still think it's just too early to really give it that name?
For me, like I think it's a pretty good rivalry, especially now that Padres are a good contender for a championship run. So and they're also like both in Cali. Teams always want to be like the best in their state and just have that like bragging right. So there's definitely like a little like an extra push there. And you can't forget, Padres have Yu Darvish, Machado. They've had players that have been on the Dodgers too. So those players just want to beat the Dodgers, and Dodgers just won a championship. So they just want to beat them bad. So I think there is just like a little rivalry there. I wouldn't say like a super big rivalry like the Yankees and the Red Sox, but definitely like a Lakers or Clippers type of vibe.
Yeah, I definitely saw when I was watching the game. It just felt like playoff baseball, like super competitive. Emotions high. That's like the best kind of baseball, and I guess it's always cool like to live like in a state where you have two teams that like hate each other and are beefing. Super excited about that, but I think like what Justin said, it's more of like a Lakers Clippers rivalry. That the Clippers just got good. San Diego, they just got good. So they're still a little brother, of course, to the Lakers. So, but it's gonna be a fun rivalry, and I'm looking forward to watching more of these games.
I agree with you guys. All three of you guys. I think it's a good rivalry. It's always nice to have a local rival to push you guys to go forward. And I like the point that that Luke brought up, that the Padres are like the little brother. And in some cases that's good for the Padres, because that just gives you that extra push to want to go to beat the Dodgers even more, to push over them, and it's definitely going to be a good thing to watch this next coming seasons.
Yeah, I mean, it's always fun to like see these little rivalries. I feel like they kind of come and go every few years. In any sport, I think maybe we could also compare this to the rivalry the Cavaliers and Warriors had in like the mid 2010s, like mid to late 2010s, constantly facing off against each other in the finals. I mean, we know it's not up to that stage yet, but that's just kind of the vibe. It feels like every game is intense against each other. Like those teams hate each other, kind of that sense. And I mean, it feels like playoff baseball already. It really does. And I'm curious to see if this will become a continuous rivalry throughout the decade and maybe moving forward, see if this is the change for the Padres and their franchise. They don't have a World Series championship in their history. So, I mean, there's that. And I mean, like you guys mentioned, pretty much the exact same thing with the Clippers. They've never won a championship. The Dodgers are one of the best teams in the league's history, one of the most historic franchises, as the case with the Lakers, of course. 17 championships. The Dodgers have 7. Um, it brings off those type of vibes for sure, but it'll be fun to watch this season and for seasons moving forward. But with that said, you guys, let's move on to you, Luke. What do you got for us with the NFL?
So it happened last week. Julian Edelman announced his retirement from the NFL. Pretty big news, especially if you're a Patriots fan. You know, you had a lot of high hopes, especially like last season. You know, Cam Newton wasn't very healthy, but going into this season, you have a crazy free agency. You bring all this talent on the defense, the offense. Cam Newton says he's more healthy than he is. Julian Edelman didn't play for the rest of the previous season because he was getting surgery to help his leg. It's going to be pretty, you know, they were just so looking forward to this. And then he just drops the bombshell like, hey, I'm actually going to retire. And now the debate is whether or not he's a Hall of Famer. He's put up pretty crazy stats as far as postseason.
Yeah, I think, man, that's a really tough debate, you know, because a lot of players are remembered because of the big moments, and he's definitely had a lot of big moments. He had that insane catch in Super Bowl 51 against the Falcons. He had the go-ahead touchdown in Super Bowl 49 against the Seahawks. So, I mean, he's had these instances of just great games. He was a Super Bowl MVP, correct me if I'm wrong, against the Rams, and he's had a bunch of great moments. And in regards to being a Hall of Famer, that is very tough. I'll say he gets in solely alone because of the post, like what he did in the postseason. But I know where you're coming from with in regards to regular season stats and things like that, and really observing the player as a whole. I mean, he kind of reminds me like of a Robert Ory in the NBA. He's like a really good casting player type of thing. Like other players make him better, but you know, he just always shows up in the big moments. That's kind of a player I would compare him to, like in the NBA, but it'll be interesting to see for sure, to see whether he does become a Hall of Famer or not.
Yeah, to kick off of that, it sucks to see him retire, especially with how much promise the Patriots were going into the season. You know, on a previous episode, we talked about their offseason moves. You know, they're picking up a lot of players. Cam Newton's coming back. So it sucks to see him go when they could have made a run. But in terms of him being a Hall of Famer, you know, I don't watch a lot of like regular season football. I definitely watch playoffs and Super Bowl. And seeing what he did against these teams in the Super Bowl, you know, was just astounding. So if we're basing off of that, I would say he's a Hall of Famer, but a true Hall of Famer could be good throughout the whole season, all the playoffs, just throughout his whole career. So I'm unsure if he should be in Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the biggest thing right now. Like his playoff stats, there's like 118 catches, 1,442 yards, 7 total touchdowns. Like it's insane, but like he barely gets past 200 in rankings when it comes to regular season, which isn't very impressive. Even like a lot of veterans are saying whether or not he should be a Hall of Famer. I don't think he should be a Hall of Famer either. Personally, I think he just fit the system that he was in, not taking any credit away from, you know, how hard he worked or his route running ability, but he was in a system that made him flourish and why he was able to like succeed. Plus, he had Tom Brady as a quarterback, and that always helps. But he's had a great career, but sadly, I don't think he's a Hall of Famer either.
I mean, I don't watch too much football, but I could say that, you know, from what you guys have been saying, you know, your big players are supposed to perform in big games, and playoff games are big games, you know. So just going based off what the stats that you just gave, Luke, I think he should be a Hall of Famer, even though he should you know, perform a little bit better in the season. But like I said, you know, big players are supposed to perform in big games, and the playoffs are big games.
You know, I think another thing he's really got going for him in his favor for a potential Hall of Fame bid is that he was a 7th rounder. He's kind of one of those guys who beat the odds type of thing. believe he won at Kent State, and I think he was a quarterback there. I mean, converting to a wide receiver, and just his whole story in general. I think it's something that's really a positive thing for his Hall of Fame bid. Plus the Hall of Fame stat. I mean, the Hall of Fame stat. I mean the playoff stats that he's had. The big moments, all of that combined. If he does get in, I think it's going to be for those two reasons mainly. So it'll be fun to watch. You guys got anything else to add before we wrap up? All right. Well, with that said, Roadrunners, that'll conclude this week's segment of the Sportsrunner Digest. I'm Enrique Medina, joined by Fernando Ramos, Justin Gomez, and Luke Perez. Thank you, guys. In this week's segment of the Sportsrunner Spotlight, we push our boundaries again to another local community college, as this time our team member Luke Perez got the great chance to interview Skylar Warner, a football player currently at Long Beach City College. In this week's Sportsrunner Spotlight interview, we get to know a little bit more about Skylar's story, his love and passion for the game of football, what he did during COVID-19 to stay football ready, and a little bit more about the junior college football scene here in California. We have this and more in this week's segment of the Sportsrunner Spotlight.
What's up, Roadrunners? Welcome to another segment of Sportsrunner Spotlight. I am Luke Perez, and today we have a special guest. This is Skylar Warner, football player for Long Beach City College. Fun fact, me and him have actually known each other since middle school. We played high school ball together, and now I have the honor of interviewing him. So how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm happy to, talk to you, learn more about you. On this show, we like to show love to college athletes, and I'm just happy that I could interview you, and you could share your story.
Thank you. It means a lot.
All right, man. So how long have you been playing football?
I'm going to be going on my 9th year in this upcoming one.
Nice. So we both, like I said, we both played high school ball together. So, and now you play football for Long Beach City College. So why did you choose Long Beach City?
I chose Long Beach City because I had some trainers that were pointing me in the direction, but overall just an amazing coaching staff. They put funding for their student athletes to help them academically to get out. The whole mission at Long Beach City College is to get players to Division I's, and then winning's kind of a second priority, which is still up there, but it's not as important as getting the film, getting the grades, getting out.
Right. So you mentioned how you really want a good coaching staff. How important is it to surround yourself with a good team as far as people that you train with, coaching staff, trainers?
It's everything. You are only as good as the people that teach you, in my opinion. If your trainers don't really know what they're doing, it'll show on the field. And if you can get the best possible trainers and coaching staff, which I think I've done a pretty good job at in the last 6 years, it really helps elevate your game to whole new levels that you didn't even think that you could achieve.
So what would your advice be to other athletes like you that are wanting to get better? What's the best way to go ahead and network and connect with coaches that could elevate you to the next level, or, find camps and stuff like that?
A big one would be social media. Trainers, just the bigger ones, are kind of easy to find. You have a few friends that play the game. They possibly follow a trainer or know a trainer. Just asking around and finding the right trainer for you, because everybody's play style is different. Every trainer has a different way of teaching. They have a different every trainer has their strengths, and you want to find the trainer that best fits the player that you are.
Nice. All right, so California, we're actually very well known for our junior college programs. It's very competitive over here. We have a lot of in-state guys, a lot of out-of-state guys. So explain the whole junior college football scene. How is that? Who's involved in that?
So our team at Long Beach City, they do a lot of recruiting locally. We don't have many out-of-state players, but I know a lot of junior colleges around kind of recruit players from Florida, Texas, you really get some of the best junior college football as a whole in California. I feel there's great teams throughout the whole country, but it's like our conference specifically, like some FCS schools come to our coaches and say like that, like our conference is the level of their conference. So like being able to practice against such great players, being able to play against such great players goes to show like your actual capabilities, as instead of just doing great against mediocre players, you don't get much mediocre competition. It's usually pretty good.
So how has being in this super competitive field of football, how has it made you better?
It's escalated my game exponentially. Just showing up and realizing that like you're at a whole new level, and like this is not even the level that like I want to be at right now. And that's even like a step up, but it's just realizing like I've got to beat some of these guys out to get to the level that I want to get to. It's been able to motivate me to work harder than I ever have before. Just trying like my absolute hardest, because I realize that like you really need to, because there are some really good players out there.
Mm. So obviously we just kind of got out of a lockdown. A whole bunch of sports, whether it was youth, high school, football, they were shut down momentarily. What did you have to do during lockdown to, keep mentally sharp, physically strong, in preparation that you're gonna have a season?
For the mental part of it, we had Zoom meetings twice a week with our defense, kind of going over everything that we would be going over in person. So we're not that far behind in that aspect, as long as you were paying attention and taking notes. Physically, it was a little bit tougher. I usually would go up to my old high school's practice field, but then sometimes I would get kicked out because the school campus was closed. So it was just hard finding like a good quality field, because there's fields all over the place, but like it's like potholes and like it's uneven balances or uneven surfaces. It's like just finding like a nice solid place to work was probably the biggest struggle, and also motivating yourself to get up and do that, because it was tough, because it's easy to just lay in bed all day during quarantine, especially
Right.
at the start.
Right. So you would say that you really had to learn about you had to like develop a self drive within you and self discipline in order to, hey, like I might have a season, I need to continue working hard. How important was for you to like kind of create this new you during this lockdown?
It was very important. I was getting off my senior year of high school, where it's senioritis. People talk about it. I didn't believe in it until it hit. You don't really want to do anything. Like after your season's done, like you just want to chill. Like you feel like, why am I still working out? I'm done. Um, so then basically having this opportunity was pretty huge in character development, and just creating a new work ethic for trying to take my game to the very best it can be, so I could play to the highest level I can.
Mm. So, as we know, like we said, how to work very hard during the lockdown, stay in shape for a potential season, and then you end up not having one. And youth sports are able to continue, and of course, D1 sports are able to continue, and high school sports are able to continue. And I mean, privately, we've had this conversation. Why do you feel that? How come do you think junior college sports in general were kind of disrespected?
I don't know why. All I can say is that like there is a lack of love there. Um, I was sitting there at speed training one day. I show up on a Saturday morning to work out, and next thing I know, there's like second graders playing a game of tackle football. And I was just like, are we serious? Like I wasn't able to even meet with my team for even conditioning until just last week, which was over a month and a half that I wasn't able to see any of the coaches or any of the players. And like there was youth sports going the whole time. It's like they treat us very, very disrespectful.
Mm. Can you explain why junior college sports are important? Like, talk about the people that are involved on your team, like the bounce backs and the gray shirts and all that.
It's junior college athletes aren't always D1 ready, but there are a decent amount that are. There's another reason why they got there. Sometimes it's just getting in trouble, so then they can't go straight to a D1. Grades have a big part to do with it. A lot of players are good enough. They are getting recruited to go D1, but they can't get into the school. So then they have to make a stop at junior college. And sometimes some players are just like late bloomers, but a decent amount of junior college athletes do get out and go D1, which is why it really does blow my mind that like the treatment is like that, like off, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot, like if you go to some higher level of junior college games, a lot of those players are going to be at D1s. A lot of the players that were at Long Beach City 2 years ago are at D1s and starting at their D1s right now.
I see. Well, even though you weren't able to have a season this past year, you are expected to have a season coming up. How excited are you for that?
Oh, I'm thrilled. It has been forever since I have been able to play a game, as I gray shirted my first year. So it's been 2 straight seasons of not touching the field on game day, which has been making it hard to stay dedicated because like you're not really reaping the benefits. You're just kind of doing the hard work for what feels like no reason. Right. But I'm excited. Like I'm chomping at the bits to be able to play a game.
All right. So what are your team expectations, and then what are expectations you have for yourself going into this new season?
With myself, I just want to do the most I can with the playtime that I'm given. I have some goals at like some statistics that I would like to meet in order to get some quality film to send out to Division Ones. As a team, I expect a lot. We are looking pretty good going into this year. Last year, I think, or 2 years ago, I think that if they had gotten into the state playoffs, they had a slow start. But if they had gotten into the state playoffs by the time, because they were rolling, I think that they would have won that fairly easily. I expect a lot from this team.
So on the podcast, Garage Sports Talk, I also had an interview with another junior college product who's now playing at the University of Nevada. I want you to give your advice on why do you recommend the junior college route for just athletes in general?
I'll say sometimes you just aren't ready to go D1 right off the bat. Sometimes you need a little bit more time to develop. Like me, I have trouble putting weight on, but junior college gives me that time to be able to do that and then go and play at these schools that I still have dreamed of playing at. I would recommend it. It's cheap. And it is a second shot at, if you didn't get recruited, to be able to go and do what you want to do.
Awesome. Well, man, thank you for your time. It was awesome catching up. Good luck this season. And thank you again. This concludes our Sportsrunner Spotlight. And thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.
It was really cool, honestly, to get to know a little bit more about Skylar, his experience with football, and just his time at LBCC. We actually don't have a football team here at Rio Hondo College, so it was really, really amazing getting that perspective from somebody else from another sport. Again, we thank you, Skylar, for joining us on the show this week, and we wish you all the best for your future endeavors. But with that said, Roadrunners, that officially puts a conclusion to this week's episode of The Sports Runner. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to be notified for future Sportsrunner episodes. You can also check this episode out on our online website, elpaisanoonline.com. Don't forget to also follow us on social media on Instagram at elpaimedia. And on behalf of our team, I'm Enrique Medina. We thank you for watching this week's episode of The Sports Runner, and we'll see you next week. Peace.